Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for 1000 subscribers. We hit it on Monday and I've never had so much support in a day. It really is amazing, genuinely. And I actually did a face reveal on my Twitter with a small thank you on there. But let's not bore any potential newcomers to the channel here. I've talked about almost every single aspect of Zelda's 35th anniversary, but with the anniversary exactly 1 week away now, I think that it's time for me to stop the speculation and just give my thoughts on what I'm expecting from The Legend of Zelda's 35th anniversary next week. This video could age amazingly or horribly, so why not leave a comment that could also age horribly for what you're expecting? This is just my opinion and I love reading yours, so let's get into it. When it comes to Nintendo and its many great IPs, most of you will know that I'm something of a pessimist myself. I think that Nintendo has a crazy amount of potential, but I don't think it'll ever fill itself as the company that I can see it being. So even though I said this would only be my expectations, I'm also going to be talking about my hopes. In other words, things that I'd really like but I think are unrealistic at the moment. But these are pretty self-explanatory if you've been keeping up with the channel. First of all, like many people would, I'd also love to see a 35th anniversary collection. Mario had one, but that's pretty much any piece of evidence we've had for a 35th collection at the moment. Honestly, one of the flimsiest arguments I have against there just straight up not being a collection is definitely the fact that leakers knew about Mario's collection like 6 months before it came out. The reason why this is so flimsy is because it relies on leakers, and I don't agree with what they do at all. I think that it'll be extremely easy to fake leaks in fact. Just follow the crowd and eventually you'll be right, and finally all of the attention will be on you so you can finally feel some sort of self-worth. Whilst other non-leakers are either sad that you gave them hope or you spoiled the surprise. Wow, I really have some pent-up feelings towards leakers, huh? Well, anyway, my point, back on track, my point is that a lot of leakers are just straight up wrong, and even if they're right, it's still no better. However, my best argument for there not being a collection is, well, I don't really have one. All I know is that I'd like to think I know Nintendo, and I think that they're the least predictable gaming company in the world, and I think a lot of people would agree, which means that I can't see them doing the same thing again. But because I predict they won't do it, does that mean that they will? Well, like I said, while I don't think it's likely enough to be in my expectations list, it's still possible and I wouldn't disregard it if someone else said they were expecting it, yet I still withhold that if it happens it should have Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD at the very least, and maybe another game, though I will talk about that later on. Some people seem to think that there could be two collections, one that would have Wind Waker and Twilight Princess and one that would have Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time. And I'm sorry, but I just can't see it. That is a lot of games already, especially when you factor in the development of Breath of the Wild 2. There's only so much that the Zelda team can take before they're literally throwing themselves over the line, and none of us want Breath of the Wild 2 to be lacking quality when it eventually releases. I mean, that game seriously has the potential to be the best in the series by a substantial amount. But before I turn this into a Breath of the Wild 2 speculation video, we should probably get into another hope of mine. Everyone seems to be calling for a Zelda Maker and has been doing ever since Mario Maker got a reveal for the Wii U, and while I think that it will be way harder to make that than a simple Mario Maker, I do still hope this happens. It's something that I think we'll see in a matter of years rather than weeks, but it could still happen, so let's talk about it. Many speculate that it'll be something like a dungeon maker rather than a full game maker, and I think the idea was fully rectified in our minds when Link's Awakening had half of what we wanted. They just need to give us the full keys for assets and everything. While I know a lot of people are way more into the idea than me, I can't deny that it would be super fun to never run out of dungeon content in a 2D form. A small one that I'd like to quickly add that technically comes down to Nintendo more than Zelda is that I'd like to see N64 games on NSO, and I'd like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time to take the charge. For now, I think this is just a hope, but I think this will happen in the near future. Not much more to say about this right now, so on to the next one, I guess. I made that video discussing which 2D game I can see coming over to the Switch, and I won't spoil my top pick just yet, but I will say that out of all of the 2D games, the one I want remade the most, and probably the one that's least likely to get a remake realistically, or at least just not yet, would be The Legend of Zelda the Minish Cap. It's widely regarded as one of the best 2D Zelda games, and I really do just need it. Not because I think the game needs any quality of life upgrades or anything like that. In this case, it would just be the case of making the game look even better than it used to, by changing the original style from sprite work to fully realised high definition graphics with high poly counts and everything. I'd love it to look like Pikmin or something like that. I think the original game has a lot of charm, but it could become a staple entry in the series if they remade it with these nicer graphics I'm talking about. I need to stop waffling about my hopes now, but let me know what are some of your own unrealistic hopes for Zelda's 35th anniversary in the comments with your expectations. On to what I'd like to expect though. Let's begin with what I'd say would be the smallest thing to include and realistically probably the most likely thing out of everything, since I think that most Nintendo anniversaries get this. My first hope is just a nice video looking back at every single Zelda game, just so you can see every single one of them in the limelight for a little bit. This sort of thing was present in the Mario Direct back in September. For a full 5 minutes, they just let all of the key Mario games play out for a few seconds, and I don't know why, but I love that way of honouring a series. There's a certain amount of charm that comes from a company when they actually acknowledge that these games have changed people's lives in some cases. So that would be a nice touch, and even if we don't get anything else from Zelda's anniversary, I'm pretty sure that we'll all at least be getting a video. Next up is my most recent expectation. With everyone talking about Mario 35 and how Zelda could do a similar thing, it got me thinking about how we could see the Zelda team making a new online experience for the fans. And as they released the original 4 Swords in an anniversary edition for Zelda's 25th anniversary on the eShop, I can't see any reason why they won't port over one of the 3 key multiplayer Zelda games, out of Triforce Heroes, 4 Swords and 4 Swords Adventures. I can only personally see 4 Swords Adventures since I believe it's far overdue a port to a newer console, and it's easily one of the most underrated Zelda games out there. Even playing it alone is a weird amount of fun. I've been going through it for the past week and it is a ton of fun. But even if it's not that one, I just want an online 2D Zelda game. The idea was first forged with 4 Swords, further developed in 4 Swords Adventures, then further ironed out in Triforce Heroes. Even if it was probably the worst received Zelda game ever, barring Zelda 2, it still gave us the first online experience in this format. I would now think that the Switch would be the forefront of that. A simple port seems much more likely in this case, but I'm pretty sure that it would be free. Or if it does cost, then it won't cost much money at all. My next 2 expectations won't be surprising if you've been following me over this last month. First of all, Skyward Sword HD. It's inevitable, whether it's set for this year or next year or whenever. I can 100% see this coming to the Switch. The Switch still has the motion controls and I'm certain they could figure out how to sort some quality of life features and playing without motion controls. While Skyward Sword is my least favourite 3D Zelda, it is still an amazing entry and I think that the Switch version is becoming increasingly more likely, so anytime this year seems likely now. I won't go into the finer details here, but if you'd like to see my thoughts, then there's a card in the corner to my Skyward Sword HD video. I haven't mentioned this, but I expect if they have more than one thing to show, then Nintendo will probably end up showing it in a Zelda 35th Anniversary Direct, which would no doubt hype all of us up to absolutely no end before it's unceremoniously placed onto their YouTube channel. But my next expectation, and this is a vague one, is to see absolutely anything on Breath of the Wild 2. I made this channel a year ago and instantly started speculating on the next game in the series, and to this day I'm still speculating with the exact same minute-and-a-half video now. Even the slightest, teeniest piece of information would have us ravenous to play it. Even a name would be good enough for me to milk at least 10 videos here. It's kinda crazy that some Zeldatubers are still making theory videos about Breath of the Wild's Ganondorf and the hand in the first trailer. So give us something that we can keep speculating with, because I seriously just want to see Link in a traditional dungeon fighting a giant boss like Zelda U's first trailer. Honestly, I could talk about this for hours if you let me, so I'll stop here and ask you that you check out my In Breath of the Wild 2 series of videos if you're interested in my ideas for the next game. And with that, I think it's time to conclude this video. As I've already said, leave your comments down below and I'll get to most of them as usual. Thank you all so much for watching and for 1,000 subscribers. If you'd like to join that mass of people, then tickle that subscribe button and like the video if you enjoyed. Next week I'm making a ranking of every single Zelda game in my opinion for the series' 35th anniversary, so I hope that helps you decide to subscribe. If you'd like to join this much smaller but amazing group of people and this especially crazy guy named Sumji, then please do check out my Patreon link out in the description, as you can join them for as little as £1 a month, as it really does help me out. Along with that link is my other media platforms where you can see my face reveal. Thank you all so much for watching one last time, and I'll see you all for my full series ranking next week. Please stay safe and pray that we could get some Zelda related news next week. I'm praying.